Everybody's gangster until the femboy pictures turn up on their timeline and they're like, But I feel like a fair amount of so-called straight men are probably more attracted to femininity rather than like their chromosomes of their partner, you know what I mean? It's more so the feminine presentation that people are interested in.
You know, maybe there will be a generation of like mostly socialist people who raise their kids to be also mostly socialist, you know?
We won't be here for it.
I know, but we can at least like look forward to that.
I would argue that it's an integral part of leftism to have that view. So for instance, like people in the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King Jr. and whatnot, these people, I don't think that I think they would have the same opinion, right? Like, oh, we're not going to see that future. But that's why you fight. You increase the probability into the future because you understand that you're probably not going to be around to see it, but hopefully the people, the next newer generations, pick up the torch and continue to carry it forward. It's a necessary precondition for being a leftist, that kind of forward thinking. And I would also argue that, so you said that like when you sign up to be a parent, you sign up to be a parent of a gay kid, a trans kid, whatever else. I would also argue that when you decide to be a parent, you also sign up to be the parent of their kids, a grandparent. It's almost like we have a word for that. Because what you teach your kid will go on to inform what they teach their kid, which is going to go on to inform what they teach their kid. Like, it doesn't even have to be their kids. It could be their friends, their family, their local community, you know? So, you wanted to do a conversation of sorts. A discussion.
I mean, yeah, I just have like guest speaker slots, so we can talk about whatever you want, but if you're not sure, like I can just like feed you questions and stuff. Mainly I was just curious about like your experience as a trans person. I don't know how much like you've talked about it on your own stream. It might be rehashing for your chat, but
that's fine.
You know, like whatever you like. Maybe like things that you wish could have been better or like more clear as you were like growing up, because I know that like education about trans people and like that they exist at all is non-existent in the US.
Oh yeah.
So kind of a problem. You know, just stuff like that. Is that kind of a good lead in?
Yeah. So yeah, to your question, well, I became aware of the fact that I was at the very least like gender non-conforming, at least in aesthetic, when I was in like my early 20s, like 22, 23. And before that, like my exposure to anything related to like gender and sex being different was incredibly limited. Like I didn't learn this shit in school, for instance. It was not taught. We learned like my sex ed was whatever. It was a bit not great. It was in New Jersey, but like it was, I think it's New Jersey sex ed's a lot better now, but when I was in that, which is a long time ago, in middle school, it was fairly lacking. Like you didn't learn about gender at all. It was just like biology shit, you know?
Yeah, that's kind of how ours was. We didn't like the idea of learning about like the difference between gender and sex is laughable. Like in Ohio.
And you're in Ohio, yeah. Ostensibly, New Jersey's a more progressive area. Not about Ohio.
The extent of our like sex education was like, don't have it, and if you do, you'll go to hell, and get like all the STDs. They did teach us about like condoms and shit, but like it was very, very limited. So,
well, at least there's that, I suppose.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so they didn't teach you about like obviously the difference between sex and gender. How do you feel that would have like helped you?
Oh, it definitely would have, yeah. If I had an actual good sex and I guess gender education, which, you know, you'd imagine you lump those two together in the same course. I likely would have known that I would have been interested in like more feminine aesthetics. Because like for me, like I've never been like, in terms of personality, like I've never been feminine. I've never been like flamboyant, never been out there, you know what I mean? And I'm still not. I don't think I'm more now because like I'm an entertainer on the internet. So I have learned how to be entertaining in the ways that I can or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, so like for that shit, I look back to like many times in my life where I probably would have benefited massively from that level of education, but I just did not have it. And of course, like I didn't know a trans person.
Right.
I think there was like one trans person in my high school, but I didn't really talk to them that much. And unfortunately, a lot of people, you know, ridiculed them, which is unfortunate.
Did that affect did that affect anything like how you view trans people or anything like that?
No, luckily I've been a fairly progressive person my whole life.
That's good.
Which is in spite of growing up in a fairly conservative area as well. So that's lucky, I suppose.
Good.
Morally lucky, some may say.
Well, you know, I mean, I was not as morally lucky. My family was conservative, but we all start from wherever our spawn point is and, you know, make our way hopefully towards the right area. But yeah, okay. So like that didn't, it's just interesting that like you're trans now, but like looking back, like knowing that there was a trans person and kind of seeing their experience, like didn't have any like significant effect. That's just interesting.
I don't think so. I think it was in my senior year as well. So it might have been like really late. Maybe if it was like in freshman year and also like I talked to them more. Like if I'd already been friends with them before their transition and blah, 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 it might have had some kind of an impact. But I think also living with my mom is probably also a contributing factor to like, even if I was like in the know, I likely would have stayed closeted for a while, I'm pretty sure. Just out of like social self-preservation, just not want to deal with that shit.
Makes a lot of sense, right? So how were your parents like as far as that goes?
My dad is very socially conservative. Though I was able to move him to being a Bernie voter over time, which is cool.
Oh, that's good.
So he's not super solid in his, at least, you know, his economic views. But he's just, you know, he immigrated here from Honduras when he was 18. So in a lot of Latin American countries, there's a lot of machismo. It's a lot of fucking flaming gays out in there too. There's a lot of very feminine, you know, Latino and Hispanic people out there. It just seems to come with the territory. But there's also a lot of social conservatism, and then he adopted that as well. I have some theories about him. I think he might like be speaking from his own experience, like he might be a repressor, but I don't actually know. I don't want to smear him like that, but I have some theories. I've got some pieces, some clues. But anyway,
it can be a dangerous game to play to like psychoanalyze that, but I understand where you're coming from.
I've just got some stuff that I know that obviously I will not divulge. But anyway, it's interesting. But yeah, so that's annoying. Like he's not very fond. He's like the homophobic dog is the way he engages with it. Like he's not viciously, you know, weird about queer issues. He's just like, I'd rather not. You know what I mean?
I understand.
And then my mom is, you know, pretty fucking progressive, but she's also a little bit socially conservative, and she's also drifted further to conservatism, I think, because of Facebook, which is unfortunate. But
yeah, Facebook has not been kind to our parents. One of my other streamer friends has a theory, and it was in DM, so I won't give them away. But basically, they said like they think that our parents' generation has lead poisoning, and that's part of the reason that they're the way they are.
I mean, yeah, we've got microplastics, they got lead. Yeah. You know, what can you do? Really?
You know, our T levels are lower. Their brain is not as well or something. Like I don't know what it is. Something in the water, man.
Something unfortunate, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. But like my parents, man, not even a contest of like which way they leaned. Like my dad straight up told me like, you know, I would take it as an insult if you came home with a guy. Like it's like that level of
the Bolsonaro approach. I said the Bolsonaro approach.
Yeah, it's crazy.
He's got some famous quotes about if his son was ever gay. But anyway.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Pretty bad. It's the president of Brazil, for those of you who don't know. Very cringe. Very not good.
Sucks, man. Because like that's not unconditional love at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like I want you to be the way that I want you to be. The reason why I want you to be this way, I can't actually explain to you in any logical capacity, but it's just the way that it has to be. It's a very odd way to view your children, I feel like.
Well, yeah, and like, you know, my parents would be like, oh, well, you know, it's an abomination of God, etc. Like, okay, well, what does that mean? Well, you know, it just says it in the Bible. Okay, why should I care? You know, because it's the Bible. Oh, got it.
Okay. Because I said so, essentially.
Yes, exactly.
If you think about it, the Bible is one big because I said so.
It really is. It's kind of weird.
Interesting.
But anyway, When did you like? Sorry, if, you might have already touched on this. My brain's rotted.
My
right
brain
now,
is
but-
also rotted, and it's not even, and I don't have much good reason like you do. So it's fine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's only been 9.5 hours, but when did you like start to kind of discover that you like the feminine side of yourself, if you will, like that you enjoy? I don't know, when did it start to occur to you that maybe you're not just like a dude, if that makes sense?
So so if I look back in time, there have been signs everywhere. However, because I didn't have the education, I couldn't put the pieces of the puzzle together. But at a certain point, it was interesting. So I think the major thing, so first my sexuality and then my gender happened. So first, when it comes to my sexuality, the signs have always been there that I've been at least pan, which I am now. And I understood that more clearly after I became aware of like femboys, and also as an extension, trans women.
Right.
Which is, a weird way to think about it, but it is what it is. But specifically femboys, like the idea that I am still attracted to this person outside of their, genitalia or even how they identify. Meaning that essentially I discovered that I'm more attracted to femininity than I am anybody's, gender, identity or birth sex or whatever, which is a major turning point. And then I was like, and then to couple that with it, I was like, wait, there's these people that even identify as, cis men who dress this way and it's poggers. So, why can't I do this as well?
Right.
Because I've dabbled in the past here and there. I think the oldest example I can give is I had a girlfriend in, like, I think in my fucking junior year of high school or some shit. And she was out of her room and she had a pair of fucking, like, yoga pants or leggings laying around. It's like, wonder how I would look in those. I didn't try them on and that's where that left it. But that's like one of the earlier times I can think about it. That could have came up. And yeah, it was just eventually I learned that if you included people that don't identify as the gender that is not what I identify as, well then you're either, or like even the same one, like what's the word for that? And eventually just, pansexual, that's what that is. Wow. So it was both really. And this, like I say, this was in my early 20s, like 22, 23, almost mid 20s. And I'm 26 now. That's pretty late in the game.
That's interesting because I consider myself bisexual and I have for a while, but I have thought about like pansexuality just because I don't know, it's like I feel like there's so many similarities. It's like hard to kind of discern the difference sometimes.
You mean for bi and pan?
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure they're just the same thing. I think the way that I always think about it is that bisexual is more of a popular term. So people feel very connected to that because when they, discover their sexuality being bi, well, then that's the one they're going to use. Whereas if you discover your sexuality not being heterosexual and you learn about the term pan first, or if you learn about both and you prefer one, well, then you go with pan. So like a lot of people will call themselves bi because it's, just the first one. It's the one that they know. And then other people call themselves pan for similar reasons, but they're essentially the same thing. There's no meaningful distinction, I don't think.
No, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Some people say like, ooh, well, pansexual, it's more inclusive because it, it doesn't exclude blah, blah, and that doesn't happen. There's no bi person out there that's like, oh yeah, you're non-binary? Well, I'm not interested anymore. Like, that doesn't happen.
I've heard that before, like, not very often, mind you, but like, I have heard rumblings of like people woke scolding about that, and I'm like, but why? Like, do we have to do that?
It's just weird gatekeepy shit. It doesn't actually happen. Stupid.
Always. We love the leftist gatekeeping. It's what holds us together.
Listen, if society's gonna gatekeep us, we might as well gatekeep ourselves as well.
I guess. But yeah, that actually is a really good way of thinking about that, and I appreciate you bringing that to my attention because I would have never thought about it that way. It's true. I do know though that like sexuality in general is just like a wishy-washy kind of, like, I don't know if it was Vosh who said it, but somebody was like, I feel like if straight dudes like we're really allowed. Wait, what am I doing? Sorry, I'm playing a game. I feel like if straight dudes were like, he said, I feel like if straight dudes were allowed to like explore these things by themselves, like they would all like dick at least a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's, you know, everybody's gangster until the femboy pictures turn up on their timeline and they're like,
Oh, the whole like, oh, are you gay if you're attracted to femboys thing?
Very silly conversation, I feel like.
Yeah, I used to like really wonder about that. Now I'm just like find attractive who you find attractive, man. Like it don't got to be this big rocket science bullshit, you know?
I think the fact of the matter is that a good amount, I don't know, like I can't really quantify exactly what percentage, but I feel like a fair amount of so-called straight men are probably more attracted to femininity rather than like a vagina or breasts or, you know, their chromosomes of their partner, you know what I mean? It's more so the feminine presentation that people are interested in. And once you understand that about yourself, it's like, well, how much about the penis do I really care? Like, am I a bottom or a top? Well, I'm probably a top, as you know, at this time, a cis-het person. But, you know, anal is a thing that people do. How do I feel about that? Well, that's not a problem. So then what's the problem with the penis? Well, there you go. And if you have, like, a major problem with penis, well, then there you go. You probably won't be going for anybody with a penis.
Right.
But, I mean, other than that, then you figured it out. Yeah.
What's wrong with that? Don't shove it into everyone's face.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people say like, ooh, genital preferences, it's transphobic. I don't think they're inherently transphobic. It's not inherently transphobic to have a preference for certain genitalia. The transphobia or the negative aspects of that preference usually happen after the fact. Like in the field, you know what I mean? Like you can have a preference for penis, but if you find a person attractive and then you find out that they have a vagina, the negative aspects will then come there. The rational response is to be like, I'm not really interested in this. Maybe give it a shot, or be very upfront and be like, oh, this XYZ, hope we can still be friends, or not, but it was nice to have met you, blah, blah, and then you move on. Very simple.
Right. Yeah, that's such like a fine line to walk of like making sure that you're being inclusive, but also like understanding where people are coming from and that like not everybody's going to like dick or vagina, like, and that's fine. I don't know, like it's very tricky to kind of toe that line to me, but I do think that makes sense. Like genital preferences, there's nothing wrong with it.
So how do you feel about the are you gay if you like femboys discourse?
I used to be really I was gonna say I used to be like really interested in it, I guess, like not super into it, but like I wasn't as political, and so I was like, oh, like I don't know, like if you're attracted to like I think I stand by what I said back then, where I was like, okay, well if you're attracted to them because they're feminine, then you're not gay. If you're attracted to them because they have a dick, well then yeah, you might be gay. Like it's like
maybe but even then that's not a guarantee, because at that point then you have to like look at their personality, their mannerisms, the way that they identify themselves, etc., etc.
Right. Because if you're attracted to them like the way you're attracted to like a tomboy, or like not a tomboy, what would be like the equivalent?
Equivalent of a tomboy?
Like a
it'd be a tom girl. It'd be a very feminine man. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, there's femboy, and then there's like, I don't know.
Well, this is the dichotomy, or the quadrichotomy. So there's femboy, and then there's tomboy. Those are two sides of the same coin, roughly.
Right.
Because they all share a lot of the same characteristics. There's a lot of overlap between the two. The major difference usually just seems to be the person's self-identification as being, identifying as a man, femboy, identifying as a woman, tomboy, but you can also be non-binary. I don't give a shit, in my opinion.
Right.
And then the other part of that would be mask girl would then be the opposite of femboy, in my opinion. And then tom girl would be the other option for, for people that are usually identifying as men. Is the way I look at it.
Right. Like kind of, man, that's interesting to think about. I know that you've talked about it on a video before, but
yeah, the rough definitions are that for femboys and tomboys, there are overall feminine people with some masculine characteristics, interests, traits, etc. And then they usually identify for femboys as men, but not always. And then for the tomboys, it's usually identify as women, but not always. And then mask girl and tom girl are just the inverse, right? Where it's overall masculine, some feminine characteristics, traits, interests, usually identify as a woman for mask girl and man as tom girl.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess my like.
But these
my
are just my
opinion-
definitions, by the way. I'm not the fucking
course,
pope
but,
of the gender nonconformers.
Well, yeah, but it makes a lot of sense. Like, it's very calculated. I guess like my opinion on the discourse though, like, is basically that like it doesn't matter, or at least it shouldn't matter, like as much as people make it matter. Like it's fun to talk about and like consider in a meme kind of way. Like mostly it's just for memes. Like you like what you like, and ultimately, you know, Vosh did kind of turn me into a gender abolitionist. So like, in an ideal world, you know, you would just like not care. You would see who you like as attractive, and then that's that.
Yeah, it'd be mostly based on aesthetics.
Right, exactly.
Because I think it usually is already.
Right. Yeah, I mean it is. Like, and I guess what's interesting to me is like I feel like people don't talk about this aspect of like gender norms enough. Like when we talk about like gender being connected to sex, and like women wearing dresses and men wearing suits and shit, like they talk there's this idea that like trans people are like deceiving, you know, but like they're not. Like there's no reason, there's no logical biological like reason for you to assume that somebody has certain genitalia just because of the clothes they're wearing.
Yeah, it's just learned behavior.
Right. But isn't it weird to think that like, oh, we're going to like structure society around like making sure that like you can tell what genitals a person has based on the clothes they're wearing. Like you look at somebody, oh, they're wearing a dress, vagina, got it. Like,
yeah, like theoretically there'd be like the most charitable interpretation is that at some point in the evolution of the human species and the societies that we built, it was at some point relevant or helpful, but I don't even know if that's true. Like, I don't know exactly how much of that would really matter. And at that point, I think you get into like weird Evo psych shit, so it doesn't really fucking matter that much anyway.
Yeah. Give me just a second. I got a Discord message somebody.
All good.
I have somebody visiting and they're waiting outside because I told them I'm talking to you, but I'm like, you don't have to wait out there. You can come in. So yeah, OMG, Shadow looking fabulous. Yeah, I downloaded a mod to give Shadow a dress.
A dress?
Yes.
Nice.
He's wearing Amy's dress. And Sonic is wearing trans shoes. It's great.
What's so trans about the shoes?
They're literally trans flag colored.
Oh.
Yeah,
I was under the assumption that there was some brand of shoe that trans people like a lot. Which I'm pretty sure would be Doc Martens, I think. Like Doc Marten boots.
Oh my god.
Classic.
Like any queer person loves the Doc Martens.
True. I
went to Indie PopCon over the weekend, which is like smaller, like just a smaller Comic-Con. And like they like so many Doc Martens, dude. So many. Like it was crazy.
They probably make some robust boots. I've never worn them though, I don't know.
Me neither.
Well, I don't have a pair anyway.
I'm surprised you don't. You look like somebody who might. Like, I feel like you'd look good in this.
It's been on my list, I think, but just haven't picked them up. They're expensive.
Okay. I just feel like it matched like the other clothes that you would wear.
Oh yeah, I have other boots that are similar. Just not specifically Doc Marten.
Gotcha. I wouldn't know the difference between any of them. I'm not a shoe connoisseur.
Same. Never been very materialistic.
Yeah.
Until now it's with clothes a little bit, but not really.
I've got to start working on my fashion sense, especially makeup. Like I've seen, there was this one dude TikToker who does like makeup for dudes. I need to start watching him more because he's got great tips.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, let's see. What other question?
Have you ever heard of a streamer, Real Radham?
I have, yes. I've never watched him.
He's an Aussie politics streamer, and he wears makeup a lot, which is neat. And he's got this sick fucking twisted mustache, which is also neat.
Maybe I have seen them. Do they do like crafts?
More, it's usually minifigure painting. This is the main thing. All reacting to politics shit.
Right. No, I've rated into them before.
He's very cool.
Great. Oh, he's awesome.
I'm a big fan. His political commentary is really good too.
What?
Oh, his political commentary is really fucking good too.
I've never stuck around long enough I've literally just raided into him
Yeah,
because
the
he,
big
like, streams.
yeah, the big problem is that he's an Aussie, so he's on Aussie hours. It's hard
Right.
to stick around for that unless you're at fucking night mode like I am.
Sorry, more Discord messages. Okay. Making sure she knows where to go. I got a visitor. All right. So yeah, no, I've seen that guy. He's got a sweet mustache, dude.
True.
That takes effort. As
Pretty sure
somebody
it's the
with a
best
beard.
mustache on Twitch. Could be
Yeah,
wrong,
it's really-
but certainly up there.
All right, we have a guest now. Say hello to Lady Raincloud. She'll be talking with us in just a minute.
Lady Rain Cloud's been in my chat before, I'm pretty sure. Several times.
It just turned out we lived relatively close together, so
Oh,
Yeah,
neat.
like 20 minutes away.
yeah, pretty cool stuff.
Are you gonna be able to take a break and sleep, or
Me
are you
or-
staying
oh,
up?
No, I'm staying up. I got the energy drinks for days. I'm going
see.
all in.
Well, the cool thing is I'm here, so if you want to take a break.
That's what I'm saying.
Thank you. I'm not tired right now. I'm fine, but thank you. I'm probably more tired than my body feels because of the energy drinks, but you know, we're all running on fumes. It's fine.
I feel like it's usually toward the end when you see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, oh my god, I could maybe sleep soon. And it's like that point your body's like,
Yeah.
oh well, you could sleep
Yeah,
soon. Huh.
That'll probably be when it happens. But yeah, what were we just talking about? I'm sorry.
A lot of
Doc
shit.
Martens and then, yeah, a bunch of shit.
I think the last major thing that we talked about was the if you're gay for liking femboys thing.
Oh yeah, no, like, again, my final thoughts on that discourse is it's silly for the most part, and then like, it's fun to talk about, but just don't talk about it too seriously because you like who you like. That's all. On
It's
your sleep code.
fairly standard.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Like, I feel like people really try to get all up in each other's business. It's really weird. Like, even the people who like, and what's funny is they'll try to turn it around on you, where it's like, oh, well, I don't care what you do behind closed doors. Just don't shove it down my throat. And it's like, well, I'm existing. What do you mean don't shove it down your throat? Like, it's just so odd.
Well,
Like,
it's because, you know, heteronormativity is the standard. The normative position is to be a cishet person. So the simple act of existing as a person outside of that very narrow worldview is essentially like you're forcing it down their throat. Especially because there have been so many structures put in place in society to force that singular worldview. So like it's, you know, simply existing as a queer person to some people is seen as like a revolutionary action.
yeah, that's true. You can turn the light on. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. Like, man, heteronormativity really just is a brain disease, I feel like. It's fine to be like, it's fine to be straight and cis, man. Like, they just, they act
I don't know
like
about that
they're
one,
under
Chief,
attack.
but keep going.
they just act like they're under attack all the time, you know. I saw this great TikTok of like a Christian being persecuted in the US, and it's like you can just see the dude's face and like a shoe slowly coming down on it, and then it's like his own hand in the shoe.
Oh yeah, the
It's
classic
great.
meme.
I love that. But it's so true. So you mentioned your dad. How has your mom kind of reacted to all this? Like,
She's fairly chill. Like I say, she's also a little bit more socially conservative. Like I remember one time I had a girlfriend who put makeup on me, and she was like, you know, don't wear makeup or whatever. She didn't like, it wasn't like a harsh condemnation, but she did say that, and it didn't seem like a joke, so I imagine that was her actual thought. So I don't know that she's especially comfortable, but you know, what can you do?
yeah, I understand.
For me, like all this shit I, you know, figured out after I'd already been living on my own, so.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, like at least with being bi. Like, it's not anything that my parents like even know about, honestly, but because it's just not something that they have to know about, because like I have a femme presenting non-binary girlfriend, so Like it doesn't. They don't need to know. But I feel like if they did, they would not be that happy about it.
Well, from what I've heard you talk about,
Yeah.
especially with the religiosity.
Yeah, when Shark was in here when we were playing Mario Kart, he asked, "So how's your family, Alec?" And I'm like, "Well, you know, they're my family."
I think we were actually playing Risk of Rain 2, and I was here for that.
Oh, really?
Which might say something about your mental state as it pertains to how tired you might be
well,
for this 24-hour stream.
True. Man, I'm only 10 hours in, but I feel fine. But anyway, yeah, I just like I don't talk about them a lot on stream. I just feel like it's like, you know, like it's complicated. I do love them, but man, do they got some ideas?
It's difficult because like as a kid of like a bigoted parent, or like even like a softly bigoted parent, you want to like be able to reach them. You want to be able to change their mind and help them be more accepting, you know, because it's out of love that you do this shit. But it's also difficult to do a lot of the time, and also puts your safety in peril depending on your situation. It's a very unfortunate circumstance, which only ends up hurting them if you're out of the house already anyway, and like you don't depend on them anyway. Like, which is part of the reason why, you know, queer phobia broadly, but any kind of bigotry only goes back to hurt the person trafficking in it. It's like, ostensibly, your parents are supposed to love you as kids first, no matter what the fuck you identify as or what you're up to, as long as you're not like committing war crimes or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yes,
but like,
exactly.
Their own weird views of the world end up going on to tarnish the relationship they otherwise could have in a positive capacity with their children, and it's self-inflicted. Like, the children didn't do anything wrong. Of course, the parents don't see it that way. They see the kids as like an aberration or whatever that contradicted their teachings, but, you know. It's unfortunate.
It's so odd.
It's just the problem of indoctrination. But unironically, obviously the right will always talk about how the left, they're indoctrinating your kids by teaching them basic biology and sociology. But literally, it's indoctrination for them. Like, the education that they got did not teach about any of this shit. The reason why a lot of people have the thoughts they have is, one, because of what they're taught in school, two, because of the things that the people around them think. And, the education system in a lot of places is specifically formatted to reinforce that, you know, heteronormativity. So like a lot of the times these people are victims. I don't know how often they're like people are like maliciously hateful. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. But you know, like, sorry, you said that the people who like reinforce that are victims, right?
Well, they can be. There are certainly, I would imagine, people out there who are literally just hateful. But
oh yeah, of course. But like nobody's born hateful. Like, it's all taught, you know. And you can recognize that while also not putting up with their bullshit. You know, like, you got to put yourself first. But I feel like it's so complicated to try to talk about that on the left. It's like I try to tell people, like, I'm a former conservative. You know, like, I don't sit here and drone on and on about it and like pat myself on the back. I don't think I deserve that. But like, when people are out here like, oh, well, you can't talk about your past because you were bigoted. It's like, well, what do you mean? Like, am I? And another big thing that came up like in my Twitter circles is like former Nazis talking about like their past. And I'm like, it's really weird the things that they say. They're like, well, I even saw one person say, well, I'll never respect a former Nazi as much as
yeah, that shit on the left is a little odd.
Yeah, I'm like, why not? Like, I think you understand how like it can be really difficult to like overcome those thoughts, you know?
Well, yeah, you're working against an entire fucking machine that's been impacting you since you were born.
Right, it's just really odd.
It's hard to overcome that. I think one of the contributing reasons for why there are people on the left that are like, oh my god, I can never trust a former Nazi, or like, I don't think that even exists, blah, 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 blah. I think it's mostly out of pain that those people have suffered at the hands of people with, you know, Nazi worldviews and whatnot.
Of course.
I think like I don't want to like psychoanalyze in
No,
a
I
general sense, but I think
understand.
it's like kind of almost like a trauma response.
Right. But like if we're going to be like if we're going to like give people the benefit of the doubt, we got to do that both ways. Like, you know, like if we're going to sit here and say like, well, you know, people were like indoctrinated into that culture and like it's all learned, it's mostly learned behavior. Like, okay, well that's true the other way too. Like if you're like opposed to people who are former Nazis and you were hurt by Nazis, then yeah, that makes a fuck ton of sense. Like, of course. I guess at the same time, like subconsciously, I hold people who say they're leftist to a higher standard. You know, like I guess sometimes I just like expect them to understand because I myself am a former conservative, and that's not fair of me to do. But you know, it's yeah, it's a tricky line to toe.
Well, there are even whole ass organizations like Life After Hate
Right.
that their stated goal is literally to try to, one, stop people from being Nazis, and two, coach them into, you know, being able to not be Nazis for the rest of their time and understand a lot of the things that they were usually either coerced into thinking or indoctrinated into thinking, or maybe even like they legitimately like 100% became Nazis from nothing, and like that's what they wanted, or that's what they, I don't know, it's some crazy shit. And, like, even like saying that is odd to me. Like, it feels weird to think that there would be people that are like standard non-hateful people that all of a sudden one day have just decided to become Nazis. I feel like that's
Right.
doesn't happen. I feel like it's usually a learned thing.
Not often. Like you don't just like. It definitely doesn't happen spontaneously, like ever. Like
Yeah.
it happens slowly over time. Like if you've ever seen like, which I'm sure you have, like Nazis in action with their rhetoric, like it's very malicious. It's like they draw you in slowly. Oh well, you know, I just believe that like, you know, different races have different problems. I believe that like, you know, I'm gonna get clipped for this, but you get it.
Yeah.
Like shit like that, and they're like, oh yeah, you know, that makes sense.
Yeah, you're saying that
And then
essentially Nazis like to like couch a lot of their actual beliefs behind more simplistic, less abrasive, less overt, essentially hide your power level type shit to draw people in.
Well, they have to.
Which, you know,
Otherwise,
that's
it's just like, oh.
yeah, exactly, because fascist right wingers, generally conservatism, not very popular. It's almost like you have to do the indoctrination to get people to turn out to have those beliefs or something, you know?
But you know what's funny is you almost have to do the same thing with leftism.
Well, that's because in that way you're fighting against the indoctrination, right? Like,
Of course. You can have the similar strategies while also working toward opposite goals. But like you can't just start off by saying, "Oh yeah, I'm a communist." Like that will never work in America.
yeah, because
Like
there's
people
been
think
too
communist,
much.
they think- right, a little too much too fast. They can't swallow the horse pill yet. You gotta
Yeah.
start small.
Like I say, like there's an entire fucking machine that's been like led and pioneered by multiple different people throughout decades to warp the perceptions of reality for a lot of people that have these beliefs.
Right.
It's incredibly rare, in my view, that people would be like leftists by default, in terms of like at least how we understand leftists to be. You know, egalitarianism seems like a thing that most humans would generally be interested in, outside of any kind of intervention. Like, so like I don't mean that, like, you know, when I say like leftist, I mean it's when it comes to like the economic prescriptions, policies, and all this kind of shit. I don't think like people are, you know, born with an inclination to that. That shit you have to learn and understand, and usually break out of a lot of other thoughts that have been specifically crafted to be counter to those ideas. And now I forget what the fuck I was talking about.
I mean, we're jumping all over the place. It's fine.
And I'm trying to stay quiet.
No, you're fine. If you feel like you want to jump in, you can. You can come up.
If it's fun, yours okay with it?
That's fine. I have no issue.
Oops, sorry, the carpet rolls up.
Oh, careful.
I just hit my head. It's fine.
Head desk. Literally.
But yeah, I mean, yeah. What were we just talking about?
Stuff and junk and things.
There was something about
What about root beer?
fucking learned behavior indoctrination.
Yeah. that's kind of where I'm coming from, because like I
Oh,
told
it was
I think
specifically
that-
about the leftists who like don't think that, you know, people can reform if they've been
Yeah,
Nazis or whatever.
yeah, and I guess like I get inordinately irritated by that, because again, like I came from that. Like I don't know if I said this when you were here. When I was in 6th grade, it was McCain versus Obama, and I was literally at the point of indoctrination where I was like, oh, God would never allow Obama to win the election. That's why I'm literally going to bet money, and I did, that McCain is going to win. Like,
Oh,
that's
damn.
how bad it was.
How much money did you lose?
$5.
Damn. That's a heavy loss. That's when you became a leftist, right? And the financial impact was too much to overcome.
Totally. I wish that was when I became a filthy Democrat, because then I could have at least enjoyed like the liberal years of Obama and had brunch, you know. But no, I was miserable during that because I was convinced that the country was going to die, because that's what my parents convinced me of. So yeah, that was great. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I guess I just have a little bit more sympathy, which is fine. Like, we all come from different places, but I would just like to see a little bit more like accepting behavior, that like people can change, and behaviors can change, and attitudes can change, you know.
Well, that's literally the project of leftism, right?
Right.
So obviously the easiest people to reach are going to be like apolitical, non-affiliated types of people. But it also, one of the aims of coalition building is converting people from not leftism to leftism, right? It's counter to those goals and counterproductive in general to like disallow people who have converted from other ideologies to the one that you're trying to get more people in. Because like the only way you win anything is by having people on your side. Now, obviously, I don't know that it's the best use of time to specifically 100% focus all of the energy on the left and trying to convert, you know, right-wingers. Because like liberals in the Democratic Party have been trying to do this to varying degrees of not much success, like trying to convert never Trump Republicans and shit. But like, if there are people that are on the internet or in like organizing in real life that are seemingly especially good and well equipped to handle trying to convert people that would normally have right-wing views to the left, that's still a necessary part of coalition building. So like to wholesale not be in favor of that, I think is just foolish and a strategic blunder.
Yeah, no, it's not great.
My opinion on that is especially been formed by a lot of the things that have been going on in Twitch lately, in Twitch politics, is that you said it yourself, Conure, there are organizations with professionals dedicated to helping people, right? And I don't think that anybody that's like in the Twitch political space right now is an individual that is a professional that is trained. You know, myself included, don't point the finger without realizing there are 3 pointing back, right? I don't think we have the resources, the skills, the experience, the resources to spend the time and energy that we do trying to convert people on Twitch. And I very rarely see it happen in a way, and like I've talked to people over the last few years on Twitch and go, okay, how many people have you converted? How many people have you actually impacted? And I've never had anybody tell me more than 3 or 4 people over the span of all the time that they've been on Twitch politics.
To be fair, it's a bit hard to quantify because not all the people that are going to be answering that question, like, oh, did you previously have X beliefs and now I've moved you to Y? There are going to be people that are embarrassed to have had their previous beliefs who might have been moved, who don't really want to admit that, or literally just lurkers or passive consumers of the content, you know? But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, and again, like, when I got here, you were all talking about like parents and stuff. You know, I'm trans, and my child is gender nonconforming, and you know what we're dealing with here in Ohio right now. You know, a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
And I'm indigenous. I don't look it. You know, Joy's being mixed and white passing indigenous. When I hate that word, but you know, it's with I guess the reason I bring it up is a lot of people have had a lot of pushback in the leftist spheres on Twitch for people wanting to control their spaces and to control their communities and to not let certain types of individuals with certain histories into their space. And those people quite routinely get singled out as being bad or evil or wrong or, you know, whatever. Like, look at the situation that happened with Keffels, for example, right? Like, and I, for one, actually think it's entirely okay. Like, why is it me, an indigenous trans woman, why is it up to me to open my space to somebody that thinks indigenous people don't deserve to exist or trans people don't deserve to exist? Why is it up to me to do this? Why do I have to let my community open to them? And if I shut the door to them, why am I a bad leftist? Is basically the question, right?
I think the way to look at that would be is that it's a case by case, like individual basis when it comes to individual creators and their tolerance and moderation policy when it comes to people like that. I think the difficulty that a lot of the people that are on the pro side of, there are, you know, some people on like in political content creation on Twitch, on YouTube, whatever, that have seen some success in like the de-radicalization shit, that then, so like there are people that are against that idea that do have a valid perspective of like, this is my individual platform, I don't want to have XYZ kind of person here. Like, it's up to you to moderate that however you want. I think some of the people that are pro that de-radicalization can then see that as some people saying, well, these de-radicalized people should not be on the left at all. Not just individual content creators, individual predilections to their moderation, but rather this is just not a thing that should be happening.
Right.
And I don't think that's fair either.
Right. We're trying
from
to
my
find
point of view.
I don't think that any single content creator is obligated to or like any person in general is obligated to let anybody in just because. Especially bigoted people is what I should say. I feel like there's like people who just want to vibe, you know, and that's fine. And if you want to get rid of somebody who like makes a comment or asks an uncomfortable question or anything like that, or like an offensive question, like one of those just asking questions types where you know exactly where it's going, yeah, get rid of them, ditch them. Like if that's going to be better for you and your community and your mental health, then yeah, go for it. I guess for me and my community, I try to be a little bit more open to those kinds of questions, and I try to be a little bit more engaged with those kinds of people, because not like most of them are not here to learn, right? Obviously, but some of them will be. Like some of them will like genuinely ask questions like, dude, why are you like a former conservative, like now leftist, still like straight presenting cis white male, whatever, like it doesn't make any sense. And I can like explain like, oh, well, this is where I came from, this is why I'm a leftist, like, you know. And what I found actually is that a lot of people will agree with you like on the economics and like the fiscal side of it, right? Where it's like, well, don't you fucking hate your job? You know, like, don't you wish you paid more, etc. And some of them will call you like lazy, whatever, but some of them will be like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. Like, I hate my boss. Like, yeah, that, and you can cultivate that and then pull them into other ideas because they'll be around people of other backgrounds. And that's kind of how I got pulled over on social issues as well, is I was just around trans people. I was just around gay people. And I realized like, oh, these people aren't like these big, mean, evil, nasty people that I've always like learned them to be, you know? So I feel like anybody can change, and I try to be as open as possible as well.
Yeah, I think it's like I say.
Open.
Yeah, I think, like I say, I think it's an individual like tolerance thing for each individual creator, what you're willing to put up with and what your moderation policy and rules for your space are. I am sympathetic to the argument, well then, if there are people on the left in these spaces and they're doing this, they're trying to do this de-radicalization thing, well then those de-radicalized people who are not like, you know, who still probably hold on to some of their previous beliefs, but maybe they show themselves in different ways, now these people are going to come to the spaces that like my channel or whatever, and then you got to deal with potential negatives from that. Like, I'm sympathetic to that, But I feel like you just moderate that and move on. I don't know.
I think the big thing is that forgiveness is not required, right?
Oh no.
Yeah, you can just, you know, you just decide, like, I don't want to engage with this person, I don't want to engage with this topic, and that's that.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm fine with that. You know, I don't have any right to tell people who they can forgive and not forgive, like whatever. But I do think that it is more constructive to understand that people are able to change their ways and be better people. And you know, you can't always judge people based on their past. They're not that person anymore.
Yeah, I feel
that's just an important thing to keep in mind.
I think most people's starting point is not leftism. I wish that was the case, and obviously we fight for a future where that literally is. Because obviously in my view, and most leftists' view, you know, and everybody's view, I guess, but it seems like at least the data suggests that a lot of the economic policy and the social prescriptions are closer to correct, or at the very least doing the least amount of harm, providing the most benefit, higher utility. So like obviously we would want a potential future to be where like these things are taught in school and yada yada yada, which obviously they currently are, because the only time you hear about socialism or communism is about fucking Cold War or whatever. It's full of propaganda, blah blah blah.
Right.
But like I just don't know that many people's starting point is leftism. Either you got to leftism from being a former liberal, or a former apolitical person, or a former conservative. Like I don't know that we've achieved the point in society where people's starting position is leftism. Because, like I say, there's an entire system, multiple systems put in place to make it so that's not the case.
Yep.
To keep people in a capitalist, realist, you know, conservative, social climates, you know. It's hard to work out of.
I would argue that there are certain communities that the starting position is as close to leftism as you're going to get. You know, I grew up specifically, you know, being taught about my heritage as somebody that's Lakota Sioux, and you know, 60% of indigenous people in this country are, you know, Christian, but not that many of them vote Republican, obviously. But I grew up with positions from my culture and heritage that were quite close to what a lot of people would consider leftism, you know, especially, you know, with two-spirit individuals, or, you know, concepts of money and land ownership and you know, restorative justice and all that types of things. So obviously we're a very small, you know, indigenous people make up 2% of the country. So, you know, I think you're still right. Obviously that most, being 98% of the country, most people's starting position probably isn't, but I find it far more that indigenous people are far more likely to have began their understanding and their journey from a semi or as close to a leftist perspective as you're going to get than the average, you know, person here in America.
Well, that makes sense too, because I feel like egalitarianism generally is a very interesting idea for a lot of people. Before a lot of the hate that stops that from being the worldview a person has, you know, has time to take root. Like the idea of like sharing is caring is like a very simple thing. That's, you know, you can extrapolate that out to a variety of leftist ideals. But, you know, it's usually just taught to kids, you know, don't be greedy, share your fucking toys or food or whatever with your friends, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like most people kind of understand that. Like, you know, you help us, help you, help us all, blah, 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 blah. So obviously, I think the leftist project would then be to make more and more people that had the kind of starting position that you had have that kind of starting position, you know, through a variety of metrics, like a different and like different avenues of approach.
Right. I know you have kids.
I do.
Yeah, and then I want to have my own kids. So like, I am obviously going to instill leftist values into them, and hopefully we get more and more. It does seem like, you know, for all the doomerism that we do, it does seem like more and more young people. Like we're even hearing about on the news now, like more and more kids are turning to socialism. Why is this? Right? And it's like, well, that's great. Like more of that, please. And it kind of gives me hope that, like, you know, maybe there will be a generation of like mostly socialist people who raise their kids to be also mostly socialist, you know?
We won't be here for it.
I know, but we can at least like look forward to that, you know, and hope that our kids or their kids will have it. Because that is the goal, right? Like this is a human project. And we're not going to be around for all of it, but we can at least make the most of it while we're here, you know?
I would argue that it's an integral part of leftism to have that view. One of the necessary things that you have to understand as a leftist is that, or anybody fighting for the liberation of any oppressed group. So obviously, leftism in the economic sense is through class, and then also through the social sense is for a variety of marginalized people based on gender, sexuality, race, etc. So for instance, like people in the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King Jr. and whatnot, these people, I don't think that I think they would have the same opinion, right? Like, oh, we're not going to see that future. But that's why you fight. You increase the probability into the future because you understand that you're probably not going to be around to see it, but hopefully the people, the next newer generations, pick up the torch and continue to carry it forward. It's a necessary precondition for being a leftist, that kind of forward thinking.
Right, and when you're black-pilled, you're just stating like, oh, you know, these things aren't going to get better in my lifetime, or even like they'll never get better.
It's a fairly self-centered way of looking at it.
Like I mean, I don't get me wrong, I've felt black-pilled before, especially now with what's going on in Ohio. Okay, I am not above understanding that people feel hopeless sometimes because it looks bleak right now. Like pretty bad.
Yeah.
But
I think a kind of nihilistic hopefulism, you know, some people could be good to engage in. So like the idea, like you can see all this bad news and like you can be black-pilled and like it doesn't even make you feel bad anymore and blah, blah, blah. I think it's still possible to have that kind of view because like that's how I feel like I engage with a lot of shit. A lot of the time it does make me feel fucking anger a lot of the time when it comes to a lot of the shit that I'm seeing, especially in regards to trans people. But for a lot of stuff, it's just like water off a duck's ass, unfortunately, because, you know, I'm desensitized to it and seeing it. I've been following it for a long time. But I do find a way somehow to retain the hope, you know, for the future. I think it's possible to juggle both. Right. But I can understand, like, the difficulty.
Of course.
I myself am probably there. I've been there for a while. I'm almost 40, and you know, I started my transition 3.5 years ago. You know, and things seem extremely hopeless and bleak. But you know, for my child that's about to turn 10, I didn't get to raise my 20-year-old. But my child that's about to turn 10, I have to push it all down for her because I have to hope that she has a better world to grow up in.
Yeah.
You know, and that is selfish because I'm only thinking about my child. But
I would argue against that, but continue.
Really, right? You know, because if I want her to have a better world to live in,
necessarily that means everybody else would.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I don't know how people get there without children. But I shouldn't say that because obviously people can get there without having kids. Like, you don't have to have kids to want that out.
Well, it's certainly true that having a child, if you weren't previously very future focused, necessarily, like, you kind of have to be if you care for your kids. Yeah. Because they're going to be around, you know, ideally after you're not.
Right.
So, like, you kind of have to do that. Which is also, you know, a big thing for a lot of people who are newly parents.
And my soon-to-be 10-year-old, June 12th, turns 10, and I can't believe the time flew by like that, but is daily having conversations. You know, she'll come downstairs and, Mama, I think I'm gay, or Mama, I think I'm a boy, or Mama, I don't know. And I want a world, and she still goes by she, her. I want a world where she has the ability to figure that out, to explore. and the deadline is fast approaching. If my child is trans, is gender non-conforming or whatever, and turns out that way, I've got a year or two tops before, you know, any she begins puberty, and then any long-lasting damage to her is stuff that can't be, you know, repaired. And this country is saying that because I want my child to be able to explore themselves and to grow and to be able to answer the questions that matter most to them, that's I'm not a good parent or whatever. So I think it's a combination of both things, where I'm simultaneously, I want the world to be better for her and therefore everybody else, but I'm also really terrified that it's not going to be. It's kind of like that dichotomy, that conflict inside of like, what if when I'm gone and she decides to have children, what kind of world is that going to be? And it's kind of scary, the whole situation right now.
Yeah,
And
it's a very big motivating factor for people to fight for a better future.
it is, yeah, very much so. I want my child to have a world to grow up in, so I'm, you know, very environmentally focused,
Well,
you know, that sort of stuff.
Right, and I have no clue how my kids are going to turn out. When you sign up to be a parent, you sign up to be the parent of a gay child, a trans child, a handicapped child, whatever. Like that's on you now. You brought that person kicking and screaming into this world against their will, and now it's on you to ensure that they have a decent life while they're here. You know, so people who like are religious zealots and they don't understand this, like just completely forego that. It's you know, and they were honestly probably abused when they were growing up, and that doesn't give them an excuse, but it's a cycle. It's a vicious cycle. And breaking it, I think, is the important part.
Yeah, I think the negative aspect about the religiosity there is that a lot of people, if you do believe in an afterlife, well, it's like, well, what fuck do you give a shit about people suffering in this one? If, you know, if you remain a pious person, you're just going to get to that afterlife anyway. What does it all matter, really?
Yeah, that's the insidious part.
And I would also argue that, so you said that, like, when you sign up to be a parent, you sign up to be a parent of a gay kid, a trans kid, whatever else. I would also argue that when you decide to be a parent, and ideally we live in conditions where it's a decision actively made by people every time, but, you know, it's what it is.
Yeah.
You also sign up to be the parent of their kids, a grandparent. It's almost like we have a word for that. Because what you teach your kid will go on to inform what they teach their kid, which is going to go on to inform what they teach their kid. It's a,
Of course.
yeah. Or even, like, it doesn't even have to be their kids. It could be their friends, their family, their local community, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not just about your bloodline. And I think
Parenting is an
a lot of
important job.
I would never tell my child this, but she was a wonderful surprise. She was not planned. But you know, we went through with everything, so yeah. I didn't want another child at the time. My first child was taken away from me against my will when I was 18, before I got into the military.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, she'd be 20, 21, I think. Because I'm 38. Yeah, she'd be 20. And so I didn't want another child, and then Ariadne came into the world, and yeah, so now I can't imagine living without my child. So, and I hate that the world is the situation that it is, and I don't begrudge anybody at all for not wanting to have children, not wanting to bring more life into this world when things are so dark and bleak and incredibly expensive. So
Yes, very expensive.
yeah, so definitely think about it. Like, and like Conure said, you know, you sign up for everything that comes after you, and I wish more people would think about that. Like you said too, like when you have a child, you know, like my grandparents are almost 90. They're still around. They have my mom, me, and my child in the entire, like, we've had 4 generations of the family in the same household during, you know, Thanksgiving and Christmas and things like that. So it's not a stretch to have 4 or 5 generations of a family in the same household for a few years before the eldest move on to whatever does or doesn't come next. And I think it's the first time I've ever heard somebody say it like that, conure, and I really am shocked that, yeah, I wish more people would think about it like you do,
Well,
because you do sign up for everything that comes after as well, and you want the best for everything, including your grandchildren. I think, like, we've seen it a lot too. It's kind of customary for grandparents to like dote over the grandchildren even more. So yeah, sorry, I'll shut up.
No.
well, I think it's a major. The reason why a lot of people wouldn't see things in that view is, I think, a major contributing factor would be alienation, right? Like in a lot. So, for instance, in my dad's side of the family, he was born in Honduras, which is a Latin American country. Out of material conditions, they'll have multiple generations live in the same household because that's the only way you can make ends meet. You have kids; those kids grow up to be able to work. And then the work they do around the house or to make an income contributes to the parents of that kid and also their grandparents being able to continue to live, right? Now in the United States, you achieve a level of comfort, though people are struggling all the time, but certainly not at that level. Though obviously there are communities that do still do that, have like multiple generations in the same household out of circumstance. But anyway. This idea that you're supposed to like move out of the house at 18 and then you go off to college and then you get your own house and yada, yada, yada. This kind of disconnects you from your family. Whereas if you lived in a multi-generational household, then you kind of necessarily have to look at your frame of reference from their frame as well, which I think expands it past like the narrow focus of one's own life or maybe just your parents or your kids, but their parents, and then also your kids and how they interact with your kids and blah, blah, blah.
You can't shit where you eat.
It's, I think, a major thing that informs that kind of worldview that people are just lacking in places like the United States, where the expectations that everybody lives in a fucking McMansion or like a cookie cutter suburb house in suburbia, which is the most alienated you could possibly be from your local community, much less your family,
Yeah, I mean, I never even thought about it like that because I'm just like, it's funny because like I always talk about, I keep going in the same place. I always talk about how like people are so caught up in their own world that like they don't look at like 5 feet outside their own bubble. I'm guilty of that. Like, I don't think about like, oh, people live in like multi-generational households, like just different circumstances like that. It's really interesting to hear that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is the product of breaking out of that bubble, right?
Right.
Start to talk to more people, learn about more shit that you hadn't thought of previously.
It's just interesting because, like, you're right. Like, they have a vested interest. Like, well, everybody does, but like, it's more immediate, I guess, if you're living in it. With the grandkids there with you, and possibly even like the great grandkids. Like, you watch it happen in front of you, like in real time. That has a deep effect on you. Probably deeper than like, the standard modern American household where like you get kicked out when you're 18, basically. There's just more of an effect than that would have.
And you'd hope that it would inform a variety of like policy related things, especially when it comes to climate change. A big argument that people will make in terms of action for the climate is, well, you want to leave a planet for your kids to be able to thrive in, right? So like you'd consider that for people in multi-generational houses like that. Well, that's like more of an immediate concern, maybe, than maybe it might force other people to think about if they like only see their grandkids every now and again or whatever, That's interesting.
Yeah,
and
it's true.
It's not to say that everybody would have like a better worldview if they all lived in multi-generational households, because like I say, most of the time people only do out of circumstance. But if you lived in a more connected community, if you lived in like a walkable city that was very densely populated, and you could live around your family and like walk to their house, which is an absurd idea in a lot of places in the United States. Like, you have to have a car at least, or like even public transit, then you'd be able to be more connected to those people, and maybe, that would inform your perspective.
Yeah, I was pretty privileged in that regard because I lived in a suburb, but it was like a nice little suburban neighborhood, at least when I was like real little, like during my formative years, where like it was super easy to walk to each other's houses, and it was like a tight-knit community. and like pretty much everybody knew each other. It was great. I grew up with the kids around there. Like we didn't always get along, but you know we played with each other, and it was fine. It was good. And we like we were able to safely bike on the roads because like there was cars everywhere. Like it was great. And I remember it was kind of a slow transition because we moved all around when I was little, but like it slowly became not the case with like the houses that we were moving into that like I could do that, and I miss that. You know, I miss that sense of community. Like I live in an apartment complex right now, and I don't know a single person who lives here.
Oh yeah.
Like it's just sad.
And like you feel weird wanting to get to know your neighbors too. Like the conditions of lives and of people in America and like in other places in the world, you actively feel weird for being like, maybe I should go knock on my neighbor's door and say hello, which is very strange.
Right? Like that should just be a normal thing to do. Like I've said hi to my neighbors like maybe a couple times.
Yeah, it's usually like if you see them in limbo, right? Like in transit, like you've both left around the same time, go into your car or whatever, and you're like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's really it.
You know, I remember when my next door neighbors were moving in, like I met their daughter and everything, and it was great. But like beyond that, like I've barely spoken a word to them since then. And it's sad.
Yeah, and you'd hope that there would be like community events or whatever that would happen like in your area that you could then like invite them to and go and do shit with, but in a lot of places there aren't that either.
I've thought about like asking my tenant or not my tenants, my landlords.
The landlord arc. Freudian
I thought
slip.
about asking them if I can do like a pride thing, you know, like in the neighborhood.
What are you going to do if they say no?
Ask again, why? Like
Forcibly convert them to be gay.
Right. Be like, why?
That is the goal.
Yeah, exactly. Say, well, it's kind of gay. You won't let me do that. Just saying. But I've thought about asking them to let me do that, and because earlier in the stream, Shark was talking about like, you know, the what was it he was saying? Oh yeah, the laundry. I have to pay for fucking laundry every time I do it. It's
nuts.
And he said that would be a great thing to organize your neighborhood around. And I was like, well, I don't know anybody, so I would have to like get to know them first. And I could do that with a pride event, you know, like just because people who are on board with the gays and whatnot would show up to the pride event, and I could figure out like, you know, who's going to be on my side at the end of this and whatever. And then we could like organize after that potentially. It's not gonna happen probably, but you know, nice to think about at least.
It's possible, and at the very least, you get to go to, ideally anyway, if there are any around, ones that aren't specifically organized by you or in reference to like exactly what you're talking about, but like generally in the community. You know,
Right.
maybe you'll find some of them there. Ideally, I mean.
Right, exactly.
I think that the play would really be to like, if you can make it known that you've left for something. You don't need to know, you don't need to tell them what it is, and like your neighbors see that, and then you come back and you're like looking all nice and like you had a great fucking time, and you like kind of like rub it in their faces a little bit, like, hey, I'm fucking popping off, I'm having a great time, and they'd be like, ooh, well, where did you go? And you know, then you kind of pill them from that, like, oh, well, it was a fun time. Really, you should go next time. I don't know.
I miss.
Kind of joking around, but
No, you're
could
fine,
be
I got you.
a good method. I don't know, maybe.
Where I live, we have block parties for the whole street, and I don't go to them anymore because the amount of lock her up signs a couple of years ago, you know, and the amount of pro-Trump signs where I live was like, well, you know, I don't want to judge this entire street of people. There's probably a few hundred people living here, but I also don't want to take the chance either that I walk down to the little cookout block party and it's a horrible experience. And that should say how bad things are right now. It's like we can't even enjoy that concept really of just being able to walk out the door and head down to the little block party where, you know, because where I live, the block parties too, the local police department gets involved, so they block the road off, and the cops are actually like there too. So And of course my impressionable child's like, yay, police car. And I'm like, no, honey, no.
No, bad police, bad.
No, not yay,
boo, police car.
Not yay, police car. Police officers being nice to me. Yeah, now. Anyway, so I don't know. It's weird being in that state where you want to meet all your people, because I'm lucky enough, very privileged enough to own my house outright. My wife and I bought it off my grandparents, and we really don't know our neighbors much either, other than we were the only people on the entire street, as far as I remember, that didn't have like pro-Trump 2020 signs and lock her up signs and things like that. So it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah. Oh man, the amount of Trump flags I've seen on the back of pick-em-up trucks. It's great.
Well, that's the idea behind that, right? Out of self-preservation, there will be people like me or like you, as you described, that don't want to do these kinds of community organizing anymore out of fear, you know, and the self-preservation response stops you from doing that. That's the goal of that. And it's not to say that you should go out and, you know, risk the safety of your person to do it. And I'm just saying that, like, that's literally why that happens. So yeah, you'd hope that there would be some more public community arenas that you could inhabit rather than like a block of a street.
Yep.
Maybe that you could do. Like, obviously those things are going to be targeted as well, but if it's public, then it's a little bit harder to get away with some unsavory stuff that they might want to do. I don't know.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Hey, when was the last time you shielded for the charity?
That's a good question.
It's been a minute. We are still running a charity for Transform Cincy, which helped a close personal friend of mine get transforming clothes. They are a clothing bank that gives away free clothes, completely free of charge. They even let people model them before they get them. Really cool stuff. So, and they have an Amazon wish list, which we are trying to clear, and it'll take about $2,000 to do so. So that's the goal. I would like to get more. I think we will as the stream goes on. We are only 10 hours and 30 minutes of the way into this 24-hour stream, and we have a lot more awesome people to talk to. So please consider donating. I would really appreciate it. And so would Transform Cincy, I'm sure.
I have once again posted the link in my chat as well.
Excellent. Oh yeah, you can find the link if you !dono in the chat. Oh, by the way, let me address a couple things in chat real quick. Knuckles Burridge, I am very glad that you're here. I know that you came here for Sonic Adventure 2. I am sorry that I'm not very responsive to chat right now. It's kind of hard to do when I'm talking to people, but thank you so much for being here. Yes,
my chatters are having a great time being ignored, even though like my whole stream model is to talk to them the entire fucking time.
Right, yeah, it's funny, like they gear shift so good, like in leftist spaces at least. I think this guy came in because I'm playing Sonic, but anyway, yeah, I should rent a bouncy house. That'd be fun. Oh yeah, the ghost is a very scary creature in this game. It gave me nightmares as well. Anyway, so yeah. Community organizing is great. I'm trying to do more of that. I recently went to a school board meeting, and
nice.
Yeah, and the state representatives were there, both Republicans, because why not? So
fantastic people, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I gave my little 3-minute spiel in front of them. I was like, I hope you guys are listening. I know you're probably not, but whatever.
No, probably to it. They're not listening.
Yeah, no. But I did make sure they at least made eye contact with me, so.
You gotta put the fear of God in their eyes with your mean mug.
I was a shivering mess up there, dude. Like, it was bad. I was so nervous.
That's why you take all the anger and rage and frustration with you, like I do, as being like this just constantly pissed off, angry, you know, angry gay, angry, you know, angry native or whatever, and just be like, no, screw you, straight to their faces.
Well, but that's what they do, right?
Yeah, well,
like-
use it against them. Why
Exactly.
not?
Righteous
No, no,
anger sells, except their anger is not righteous, but ours is.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
we have to
It's very
be as
motivating.
angry as they are, if not more. Like, clearly they're doing something right. They're getting shit done.
But we have an
and,
actual
like,
reason to be angry as well. It's interesting.
correct.
True.
Yeah, they're just making shit up as they go. Like, come on. If we got our shit together, we could do that even like way better than they are.
Well, I mean, leftist unity is a myth.
Oh, for now.
The thing that I always point to when it comes to that is the absolute fucking torrential, monsoon of Starbucks locations that have been unionized recently. Like there have been more Starbucks unions formed than have been days in a specific time frame. I forget, but and things like that. And,
are you mimicking their mouths? It's funny. Did you hear about the GameStop that just recently had a walkout?
I did not, but that's kind of pog. Woke
You should look that
gamers.
up. Yeah.
The whole store quit. They just left and they put up a sign. Yeah, saying, hey, go to these 3 other game stores that are in the same mall. Don't spend your money here. Spend your money somewhere that respects and values their employees.
Which alpha move, dude.
Yeah, it seems like class consciousness is really on the upswing.
If nothing else.
A lot of that's obviously because of material condition, because people are struggling. But it's going up, and
$5 in Ohio. Thanks, Biden.
it makes I don't know. It makes this is the one thing I always turn to when it comes to trying to be hopeful about the future. So of course, a lot of these are, a lot of the focus is localized around the first ever Amazon union, the Starbucks union, and whatnot. But generally speaking, more and more people are thinking about and talking about organizing their workplace. And not only does that net the individual workers benefits, a big example that I give, which is what I think like a long-term strategy could and probably should be, is that let's say, because we've seen this time and again, how corporations will donate to, like, let's say homophobic or anti-trans Republicans, and people find out about that and like, what the fuck can you do about it? You make a social media buzz and that's really it, and like maybe do some demonstrations. However, let's say Starbucks has been found to be donating to anti-queer Republicans. Well, then if enough Starbucks locations are unionized, and they obviously are going to have queer members in their union, so there is a incentive for those workers to want to protect those queer workers that they work with against those threats from those Republican that are being funded by the corporations. Well, then if you have enough of those, you could do some kind of mass action that might, at the very least, hurt the bottom line of Starbucks, or theoretically, hopefully, if you have enough, grind their shit to a halt until they stop doing that shit and in fact reverse course. Which I think is a cool long-term idea.
You also have to hope that your union is not like majority standard white Americana that won't fight for you, because
Well, I was just gonna say that.
That's
about
the idea,
Starbucks, though. Like, it's always been kind of a meme, like, oh, the undercut bisexual, green-haired Starbucks barista. Well, that sure is biting them in the ass, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a lot of moms with it's a lot of wine moms with homophobic dogs walking into that place. But the idea behind that, though, is that if there is a lot of these unions that are like standard, cishet white Americana, as you say, there are going to be a lot of other unions that aren't. Luckily, at least in Starbucks. So then those people would coordinate, talk to those other unions that might not be as amicable because of, their lived experience and whatever else, to be motivated for that as well. Ideally. But I mean, it's a big project.
Like, it's not going to be ideal, but class consciousness is so fucking important, dude. I feel like that's like the baseline of like our goal, right? It's just making people understand, like, it's not about like America versus China. It's us. It's the working class versus the corporate elite.
It's very important. It's a thing I get hopeful about, for sure. Anytime I need to end like a heavy topic on a positive note, usually turn to that. I think it's a pretty effective one.
That's a great one.
I do apologize, Conure. I hope your chat's not too bored of the person who's like just constantly, well, yeah, but also the bad thing, and this
It's
bad
fine.
thing, and that bad thing.
I'm
sorry. I wish I wasn't like that. I just, you know, things
Well, it's
aren't
totally
great.
understandable. I have a righteously hopeful vision of the future in spite of a variety of things that are, you know, smacking me in the face every day as I follow all this shit about, you know, trans and queer oppression and whatnot, and also every other form of oppression. So, I don't know, it's just I'm a different kind of person. It is what it is. People deal with these things differently. I either consciously, but I think unconsciously now, try to always reframe things back to a positive point of view, but I don't think there's any real problem with not doing that necessarily.
It's okay.
I wish I could. I know it gets frustrating and boring and, you know, all that other kind of stuff.
Well, that's what I'm here for, you know?
Huh?
Oh, that's what people like me are here for, right? Like, there are gonna be people that can't, like, you know, for whatever reason, the weight of all these things are very difficult, as they are understandably. And these are going to be the people that are like ruthlessly pragmatic and very, you know, realistic and whatnot. Maybe to a fault, one could argue, but it doesn't really matter, I don't think. And then there will be people like me who are potentially naive or too optimistic or blah, 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 you know? Balance it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I try to be optimistic as well, but I also don't deal with nearly as many problems as other people do. So I try to use that to my advantage. Anyway.
Check your privilege.
Exactly. I check my privilege, yes.
Yeah, you sit your ass down and listen, Alec.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
right.
Can
Exactly.
you imagine if, like, the joke is like if you'd have told me your door was open and I'd have just been like, bam, check your privilege, just kick the door.
Oh no.
Kind of like the Kool-Aid man.
I would have been like, well,
The woke Kool-Aid man.
I will sit down.
sit down and listen.
Now listen here.
That would have been a funny, like, meme joke thing. Because that's how they portray us, right? The right wing portrays, you know, the left
the
like
gender
that.
police is
The gender
coming.
police, right? Like, you know, gender police, open up, sit down and listen. That's not even remotely true.
Of course. No gender police, that's silly.
Not yet.
There should be some fashion police though, because some people be not having that good drip.
The most upsetting thing to see every time is like seeing like a more masculine person and a more feminine person. So usually it's like a heterosexual relationship with a man and a woman, and the woman is like dressed up and looking all nice, and then the man just looks like a thumb in cargo shorts and like a t-shirt. It's very unfortunate. I think we need to re-emphasize masculine fashion as like a thing that people should care about.
Like the women were all gussied up for their school board meeting with their kid, because they were like, it was the last day of school or whatever. They were like celebrating their kids or whatever. And then like the dudes are just like in their cargo shorts and their collared shirt. Like they were like in short sleeve collared shirts, and it looks fine, but it's not like, you know, it's not like the women looked, you know.
Well,
Is
that's
it-
also a societal thing too.
Yeah.
It's a thing that says that women should be dressed up.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Men don't have to be. Right?
So what we have to do is not invert that and like make it so that women are now in the position of men, but rather just, you know, let off the gas a little bit when it comes to these beauty standards in general, but also specifically for feminine people, and then also up them a little bit for masculine people, you know, men usually. It'd be the play. Kind of give men a reason to care a little bit more, allow women to not care as much, continue to move until we get to the point where nobody gives a shit. People just do shit because they want to.
Well, do you remember? I don't know if the two of you are around my age, right? Yeah.
I am 26.
Oh my God! So never mind then, because I'm almost 40 and feeling old. Do you remember metrosexual, quote unquote?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've been called that before, yeah.
Okay.
By
That's
older
one
people.
Of the things too, like people I grew up with in school that were masculine presenting, that cared about, you know, and it was entirely okay, obviously, that they cared about their fashion and their how they wanted to look, and they felt free to express themselves. It was always the joke of the metrosexual, which is secretly gay, you know.
There was an element of
That-
classism to that too, which is like a weird one. Where
Yeah,
like,
a lot of
oh, it's like the urbanite or whatever, the person in these big cities they care about their looks and all this kind of shit. It's like a weird maybe classism isn't exactly the term, but like a weird like something like region specific. I don't know, it's silly.
Yeah.
I was certainly metrosexual before I was all in on the gender nonconformity toward, you know, femininity, so.
Yeah, I never really went
the
to
pipeline. You gotta be careful.
I mean, I am routinely jealous whenever I watch your streams, Conure, just saying.
Former me would also be jealous. I have made a lot of leaps and bounds, I feel like.
That's good. Former me would be like, you know, not happy. Like, what happened? No! It's funny, I actually used to browse Reddit when I was a teenager, and I was told, like, when I would argue abortion and shit, because that was, like, my main issue, like, I was arguing on, like, very basic, like, Christian fundamental principles. Yeah, and they were like, oh, you sweet, innocent child, you will grow up one day. And I was like, no, I'm always going to be religious and believe these things. Well, they were right. So, there you go, younger me. Suck it.
Dumbass.
Dumbass. Fucking idiot. Imagine being that guy. Never gonna be, well, it was me. But,
If I said something uncomfortable, by the way, I apologize.
No, I was not uncomfortable. I don't know if you're talking about me, but I'm chilling.
well, Conure, I do have somebody scheduled for the 7 a.m. Slot, which it is almost 7 a.m. for me.
Oh shit, it's almost fucking 4 a.m. over here. God damn. This is not unusual for my stream hours, but just time flies.
I've done this exactly once before when I was waiting on CuteBot, because I was trying to like do a speed date with them or whatever, which I kind of did, but then they just shit on me for being in an open polyamorous relationship the whole time, so that was cool.
Nice.
Yeah, it was great. Anyway.
Well, I mean, if you want, I could do that too. I mean, you're missing it. I don't know. Just kidding.
I gotta be honest, not my personal thing. But you know, I don't kink shame. But anyway, did you have any closing thoughts or anything for the stream?
I don't know. Well, Lady the Rain Clown, it was nice to talk to you. I know you've been in chat before. Nice to talk to you in person.
It was nice to finally like meet you. I would love to talk to you again in the future.
For sure, and also same to you, Alec. Also to Speener. I really like that name. Sens is still good, but I like Speener a lot. Also, of course, Shark. Everybody in the AlecGunter community, I hope you've had a fun time. I've been here for 7 hours now, which was a blast.
It went by fast. I was worried about like scheduling it for 3 hours, like Risk of Rain. I'm like, that's a long time. It blew by.
But it's Risk of Rain, of course.
Oh yeah.
So for those of you who are watching this, I'll probably put this on YouTube. There will be a link in the description about how you can still donate to Transformation Cincy, and also just a link to their, their outfit as well. If you want to look into that, as you should. To everybody in chat, you should as well. I know a lot of people in my chat have already donated to it, which is very cool to see. I want to thank AlecGunter for giving me a reason to play Rocket League and Risk of Rain 2 for the first time in several months. I had a blast. It's been good conversations as well. Hope you all have enjoyed it. And thanks for having me, Alec.
No, thank you so much for being here. The pleasure's all mine, Conure. It's been great. I love your content. You're so good at it. I hope you keep it up for a long time, and it's been great having you. Like I've really enjoyed it.
Hell yeah. And for those of you in my community, and to you as well, those of you in my community as well, I've had the guests link up as well. Of course, Sens and Shark aren't there anymore, but you can also follow Alec from the link there. He's the first one there because he's the most important one currently. You should go follow as well. And yeah, thanks again for having me. I hope you all have a blessed night. And best of luck in the rest of the hours that you have.
Yep. Alrighty.
Nini.
All right,
Thanks
bye-bye.
so much, Conure. We'll see you.
Same to you. See you later.
Yeah.
All right, chat. You're all gay. And you know what? That's fantastic, because so am I.